Steve got into his car and drove to the Carmel estate where the Joneses lived. There were a group of kids milling around when he arrived at the estate, and they were pulling faces and play fighting. Steve stepped out of his Mercedes, met with coos from the kids who had stopped fighting to watch him. "Hey, probably won't want to leave that car there," one of them shouted over. Steve flashed his warrant card. "One scratch on this car, and I'm calling the station." The gang of kids stayed quiet, and I noticed that seriousness in his voice. He continued to walk over to the Joneses' flat. Called the passenger lift and got in, but he couldn't stand the smell of urine that met his nostrils when he rode up in it. Took out his handkerchief, covered his face. The lift came to a stop on the 7th floor. Steve got out. He prepared himself for the news he was going to give. He paused for a moment. As he walked to the door 708, Steve turned to look outside and the windows. He could see the ruined remains of the barn. He leaned on the stair rail and pressed the doorbell. Sheila Jones answered, and she was pretty to look at as her daughters. It was clear where they got their looks from. She was very classy with her dress sense. Hair was wavy and brown, same as Betty and Caitlin's. Sheila had the twins when she was 17, though, and she looked fabulous at 53. Sheila went to the same school as Steve back in the city. Well, she went and met her husband Jim. They moved to Mortaldene. They thought it'd be a perfect place to live and raise a family. Detective Speed, you surprised me. Well, the girls come home yet, Mrs. Jones? No, I'm really worried now. Did you know there was a fire last night at the barn? Yeah, and the neighbours have all been talking about it now. Well, it seems the fire was started deliberately by someone. Inside we found 2 bodies. Oh my God, you don't think it might be my girls? Sheila started to cry. Steve stepped in the doorway, put his arm around her, and walked to the sitting room. He made her sit down on the couch and crouched on his heels in front of her to tactfully explain. Listen, the bodies were badly burned, beyond recognition. We don't really know who it is yet. It's just that when you called me earlier and said they didn't come back, I just wanted to prepare you in case it is the twins. We have to run some tests on the bodies first, and we'll let you know in a couple of days. If in the meantime they do come back, then call me, alright? I'm sorry I have to come here and upset you with this, but I thought you should know first. I will call Jim and tell him. He's away right now, but he'll contact the station to get the details if we don't hear from you before, and she wiped the tear away from her eye. Steve left Sheila in the flat and went back to his car. He decided to take the lift, stairs down, saving him from that god-awful smell in the lift. Didn't feel very good about giving the news. Deep down he knew that it might be the Jones girls. He was determined to catch the killer though, and he walked down the stairway, contemplating his next task. At the lab, Shabby was studiously scouring the dental records on the X-ray box. And there were 2 sets of teeth. They were both identical, even down to the left incisor and the curl on it. He squinted through his glasses, and then he knew they belonged to the twins. An assistant appeared behind him. The coroner was phoned through his report. The cause of death was smoke inhalation, and 80 to 100% burns. As you already know, they were burnt alive. Shabby peered at her, made a motion and rolled his arm over and pointed to a chair, and she sat next to him at his desk. I have no doubt these bodies are the Jones twins. Teeth are identical. There are clear signs that they were tied up when the fire started. They suffered badly before they finally died. There isn't a trace of evidence on them, though. This killer was very careful not to leave any fibres behind. If he did leave any, then the fire took care of that. But we have this card with writing on it, and it says Our clothes on. Well, we should get more specialists from a specialist lab in the city. I also believe this person knew the girls, and who the hell it was, I just don't know yet. And I reckon they were probably targeted on purpose. His assistant plucked the x-rays off the block scan and then put them back in the file. Shabby and Sarah went to study the bodies for themselves, left the labs for the mortuary. When they entered the mortuary, the smell that greeted them was abundant with smoke. They put on robes and masks, which would allow them to get close to the bodies without feeling nauseous. Bodies of the twins lying side by side, but toe tags weren't put on just yet. And that job fell to Shabby. He was certain it was Betty and Caitlin, and wrote their names out, but Sarah began to tie the tags to the toes. And she paused to say, "Which is which? I'm not sure." And Shabby just replied with logic and said, "Well, usually, identical twins will stand in order of their birth, enabling people to know which twin they are talking to. So let's put Betty's name on the toe to the left, and Caitlin's on the right. And note, we got it correct." Shabby left Sarah to work for a few moments, and he went to phone Steve and give him the bad news. Steve was at his station, and the call came through, and he picked up the phone, and his gut turned over, and he held the receiver to his ear. "It's your worst fears, Steve. It is the twins, and you won't miss it either. There's nothing of the bodies or the surrounding area at the scene, and we can't find any evidence whatsoever. We might never find out who killed these girls." Steve stared blank for a moment, and he gave his reply. "I will find someone. That's a promise. Tell Mr. Jones when he calls you. He'll want to know it's his daughters. I'm going for a drive to clear my head." As he put down the phone, Paul Carson came into the office and he was waving a piece of paper. "I've been out to question some of the locals. Apparently on Saturday night, a few of them saw a person acting strange. They had seen before it burnt down. I've written down a description for you." "Tell me, what is it?" "A few of them saw a man, possibly a woman, dressed in a long black coat. It was covered up with something, and the local said it was a scarf, and he looked down the place, but not suspicious." "Good. We have something to look for. Pin the notes up on the board next to the photographs of the bodies, and we'll get some crime artists to make an impression of what we've seen." Steve left the office to go for his drive.